Welcome to Peer2Peer, the podcast. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've likely heard the buzz about the groundbreaking new spiral IOL by Rayner, the RayOne Galaxy. In our first episode focused on RayOne Galaxy, I'm sure there are more to come, we're thrilled to be joined by two pioneers in modern eye care, Mr. Allon Barsam, no stranger to Peer2Peer podcast, consultant ophthalmologist and head optometrist, Ms. Purvi Thomson, both from the OCL Vision in London, UK. Allon Barsam was among the very first to implant the RayOne Galaxy IOL, so keep listening to hear about the first-hand experiences and early feedback on this brand new full range of vision lens. Allon and Purvi, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Allon, I think we should start with that lunchtime symposium at ESRS. It was crazy. I don't think I've ever seen so much hype about a new product launch before.
It was really exciting. Like, we knew that there was going to be a buzz about it, and we knew that it was going to be popular, and we knew that there was going to be a lot of interest, but we weren't expecting that level of interest. I mean, it wasn't just the number of people in the room or the number of people that were kind of queuing outside, but it was the kind of quality of people that were in there. You know, there were some, leaders of the main kind of cataract and refractive surgery organizations were all sitting in the audience to listen and to learn about the lens. So it did feel like a kind of important moment in the evolution of lens technology, for sure.
Yeah. Well, what do you think did create so much hype? Do you think it's just being a brand new technology?
No, I don't think so. If you like extended range or increased range of focus lenses, there are apparently something like 22 or 23 on the market now, and it's almost like every 2 or 3 months another one will come out. But I think in the full range of vision space, so in the lens technology space that offers total independence of glasses, there hasn't really been anything significant that's come out that's been, let's say, popular since the trifocal, which has been a long time. So I think it's just the length of time since, trifocal was a big step forward from what came before it. This is not only the first thing that's come along for a long time, but a more significant step change in the kind of technology advancement that is now available.
Yeah. It was really great catching up with both of you at ESRS. Purvi, as the head optometrist at OCL Vision, how did you feel with your team getting involved with this completely new lens design? Were you excited, or were you like, hey guys, don't get carried away, I have to deal with any problems here?
Do you know what, Ben? I was so excited from the get-go. When we first sat down and we heard about the lens and the design of it and what it promised to offer, there was a lot of buzz and excitement around it. A little bit of trepidation when that first patient came into the follow-up, just wondering what that patient will see, what the range of vision will be like, what the satisfaction will be like. But I felt really proud to be involved and also to have been a part of this history, so to speak, with this new design type of lens.
Allon, this is always a tricky question, but you're a smart guy, so I think you can explain this. But how does this lens actually work?
Yeah, so you have the spiral and you have the continuous range of powers built into that spiral, but you don't have those clear separate peaks of diffractive power, if you like, that we're familiar with with the trifocal. And I think that is what explains the benefits that you get of this lens. And when you actually see the lens, handle it, and you see it inside the eye, it's very subtle, the spiral shape on the surface of the lens. And in fact, you sometimes don't see it in certain light. It provides a continuous range of vision on account of that. So I think, lens definition has changed a lot over the last few years because some of the terminology is confusing or prohibitive or doesn't really define how the lens works or what it does. And, the categories of extended range of focus and full range of focus, this probably needs another category, like continuous range of focus.
From a personal point of view, you don't often get a chance to be the first in the world to put something new inside someone's eye. Like, I think what you guys have done is really cool. Were you nervous? Allon putting it in and Purvi seeing these patients?
Do you know what? I was a little bit nervous. I'm not going to lie. When that patient came into the room, I was kind of just, fingers crossed, and let's hope what they told me it's going to achieve does replicate into practice. And I remember vividly that first patient came in, I was a little bit shocked, actually. I ran down into theatre. I think Allon had just finished operating, actually. When I said, Allon, this lens is amazing. And he went, is it really good? I said, this patient is delighted. The vision is phenomenal. There's no dysphotopsia. and the defocus curve is unbelievable. And it was, I'm not sure if it was it was a mixture of emotions of relief and wow, all of it put together, everything they discussed at Rayner, how this lens was promised to work, what the patient leaflets showed, and then to have it transpire into real life was really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing is that the moment of doing the first implantation is just one moment that follows a huge amount of work that has happened beforehand. The prototype of the lens that was developed using artificial intelligence in Brazil, which was just done in one power. There were for sure limitations on how those patients were evaluated post-operatively, and Rayner did then, develop the technology to incorporate it onto their own platform. So there were things we knew and things that we didn't know. But a lot of it comes down to kind of faith and trust in the team. That I've personally been working with Rayner for a long time now, and I know their R&D team really intimately, and we had many discussions about it. And I've been in a room with them, and I lock eyes with them, and I know that when they tell me something, that is how something actually is. I'm not speaking to the marketing team; that all comes later. It's really pure engineering, science, and a huge desire to offer something that is safe and effective to the patient. So it's not the case that I didn't have a feeling of anticipation. Like, you still don't know until it's in, and then you've spoken to the patient, and there are so many kind of nuances to what may or may not make a patient happy. Things like the A constant and the refractive accuracy and all those kind of things are still very relevant and very much on our mind. But having trust that the lens would work how they said it was going to work was definitely there. What's been interesting with this lens, with the Galaxy lens, has been the kind of how the counselling has evolved as we've learned more about it. Once we had put in 1, 2, or 3, and we'd spoken to the patients and we'd done the kind of pretty rigorous follow-up, we just knew that the dysphotopsia profile, especially with respect to halos, was significantly less with trifocals. So, we would still go through the counselling process with patients, but when you can counsel them to say you might get halos, and if you do get halos, they are likely to be mild, it's very different to saying you are definitely going to get halos, and they'll be significant. It's not a question of whether you drive at night or not. It's a question of whether you drive. Like, if you drive and it's winter, you're driving at night because it's getting dark at 4. So for those months of the year, it's it's a significant thing. And the study that was set up to look at Rayner Galaxy, Purvi can talk more about it, but we interrogated patients very rigorously in a way that really encouraged them to tell us every single thing that might be bothering them, which is what we don't normally do at a routine follow-up with lenses. We already know how they function. If they want to complain about something, that's fine, but we're not encouraging that. But this was the opposite.
It was actually, I found that quite challenging. It's not nice to ask patients about symptoms that I know they're not getting because they haven't mentioned it to me. For the most part, the majority of the patients would say, oh yes, they are there, but actually I think I had those before, or they're just slightly bigger than before, or they're just slightly different, but they're already getting better. But yes, prompting patients about the side effects of their vision wasn't the best element of it, but necessary for this study for sure.
Purvi, how are you tracking results? Are you using RayPro, or at the moment are you still getting people back to see them physically and get them in and measure their eyes?
Exactly.
What's the tracking of outcomes at the moment?
So for these first tonight, we had 10 bilateral patients come in. So all the 1-month reviews have been done. We'll now be seeing them for their 3-month reviews, and then we're using RayPro to track their outcomes to see how they're finding the lens and how they're enjoying it. So a mixture of both, but we're still physically seeing them in clinical. So just to have a little look and see what the lens really does after 3 months. Are the patients still incredibly happy, and how are they feeling? They've got a chance to experience the lens more, live their life with this new lens in, and how they're feeling after some time's passed.
And this, this early in the post-op period, are you noticing any trends or any interesting pointers, anything?
None of them have called me to say they need to come in and see me again. So that's always a good sign. I think trifocal patients do need a bit more hand-holding. With that lens in place, there's a lot more things that come into play, such as the impact of ocular surface, the impact of light. The days are getting a bit darker here. So if they're going to be struggling, now might be the time that they start to struggle. So we do find these patients can be a little bit more high maintenance. And to be honest, none of them have contacted me to say that can they come in or they're having some issues. So for me, that's always a good sign. If they're out of sight, well, that means they're not thinking about you, which is a good thing.
That's a really good sign. I only just finished operating. I've already missed 2 phone calls, so I presume I've already got some unhappy patients. I haven't got the Galaxy yet. Um, Allon, you know, when you presented the data, and I know you guys have collected a lot of data. There was a little bit about subgroup analysis, and I know that you've told me that you've put these lenses in type A personalities, glass half full, glass half empty, different physical properties of eyes. Are you noticing any trend about who might be happy or who might be a good candidate, or does it seem quite widespread so far?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem widespread. We put this lens in emmetropes, in hyperopes, in myopes, in cataract patients, in clear lens patients, and it is widespread. I think on the whole, it is easier to make a cataract patient happier because you're removing the cataract anyway.
Yeah.
So it is quite nice with new lens technology to see how it performs in a clear lens or refractive lens replacement patient, especially if they're not highly ametropic. If they're a kind of low myope or an emmetrope, then if they're happy, it's because of what the lens is giving them, in addition to how the natural lens in their eye used to work. Obviously in the context of presbyopia. So there hasn't been a subgroup where I'd say, oh, you should avoid it in those patients. I mean, as with all surgery, to be honest, irrespective of what technology you're using and what their expectations are, the kind of type A higher maintenance patient is more likely to let you know about things that they may or may not be happy with. And that's no different with this lens to any other lens. But as Purvi says, there hasn't been a sense of dissatisfaction amongst any of the first 10 patients that we've implanted this lens in, which has been great. I mean, if that continues, fantastic.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Yeah.
Can I ask you both, is this a diffractive trifocal killer? Is the diffractive trifocal IOL dead because of the Galaxy?
I mean, listen, we only have data on 10 patients at 1 month of follow-up, but based on what we've seen so far, that I think it is. I mean, I haven't scheduled a single patient to have a trifocal lens since this lens has been available outside of the study, which has only been to some groups from October, and I think it gets opened up to everyone from January. But if someone would have been scheduled or counseled for a trifocal lens, I now say, look, the new thing is the Galaxy lens, because I do believe it to be superior. That doesn't mean that I think it's totally perfect, and they still require counseling. You still need to hit your refractive target. There may be a adaptation period, which I imagine to be quite short and potentially non-existent in some patients. So they still need to be, I think the easy way to approach this lens and to adopt it for the surgeons planning to use it in January, or maybe surgeons that will even want to kind of line patients up for then, is to just pretend it's a trifocal, but know that it's much better, which is great. It makes the counseling process easier. It takes the stress away. The outcomes and expectations are likely to be better. So, we need to look more closely at the data. You may need some comparative studies. But I can't see a reason why I would use a trifocal above this lens.
And would you tend to agree, Purvi? That's a pretty positive review from Allon.
From what we've seen so far, this lens does offer everything that a trifocal offers, diffractive trifocal offers, but with less dysphotopsia, it's a more fluid range of vision. So the outcomes so far, patients are incredibly happy. Likewise, saying that, we have patients in diffractive trifocals are equally just as happy. So I think there's potentially a place for every lens out there right now, but this is definitely a game changer.
I love how you're both so evidence-based. I kind of expected a more emotive, yeah, trifocals are dead. But that's cool. That's really cool. I like it. And Allon, any advice for surgeons wanting to start with it? Are you thinking the A constant seems about right? Are there any practical tips in terms of the surgery itself?
Yeah. So, I mean, Rayner will release kind of updated guidance on the A constant, well before January. At the moment, or let's say in the study, they were advising using an A constant of 118.6, which is the kind of standard RayOne platform A constant. And what we found is because of the kind of the defocus that is tolerant in both ranges, by the way, not just as you go minus, but also as you go plus, that by aiming for a little bit of plus, you more so guarantee good distance vision. Whereas if a patient comes out a little bit myopic, then you might lose a little bit of that distance vision. And either way, they're going to be able to read. So we are kind of using it a little bit like we would be using the EMV, at least the EMV in the dominant eye, or if you're doing kind of similar plans and outcomes in both eyes. So we're aiming for the kind of lowest positive number. So you choose the lens that's going to make them plus 0.2 or less. And that would seem to be what would achieve the closest kind of emmetropic refractive outcome based on a very small data set that we have so far, which is 10 patients. Rayner have got data sets on 50 or 60 eyes. So I'm encouraging them to release something on this that's a bit more official. So hopefully you get a bit more guidance on that. And even if they did end up, with a plus 0.5 refractive outcome afterwards, we'd expect them to have good distance vision and good reading vision despite that.
Oh, that's nice. I like a nice soft landing. And in the surgery itself, quite easy to implant. Any particular nuances?
I mean, if you're familiar with any of the RayOne lenses, it's fully preloaded. It goes in very easily, wound assist through 2.2 millimeter incision. I would say that, like trifocal lenses, you need to be aggressive in the treatment of astigmatism. So have a low threshold for using the toric version of the lens is what we've also seen. But there's really kind of no surprises. The only surprise actually is how happy patients are afterwards, which is a nice surprise. Yeah.
I think there was so much excitement about this lens, especially at OCL Vision, that, Allon, as you know, a lot of the surgeons were trying to order it before it was even available to you. So there's definitely a big buzz, especially about surgeons wanting to implant these lenses, which is always positive and great.
Yeah, I've definitely been hassling the Australian team saying, where are these lenses? I dare say we'll be doing a follow-up episode in 6 months and a year and hearing, what results you're getting and how you're using it in your clinic. So it's exciting.
Did you find out, Ben, when they're coming to you?
Yeah, next week.
Exciting.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Allon and Purvi, thank you so much for joining me to discuss your early experience with the Galaxy IOL. I'm excited to have access soon in Australia. In our next Peer2Peer podcast, we'll be chatting with Rayner CEO Tim Clover and VP of R&D Nat Davies for insights into the developmental process behind RayOne Galaxy. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back with another episode soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Ben.
For more information about this episode's topic and to read the show notes, visit the Peer2Peer hub at rayner.com/peer-to-peer. For more clinical data on RayOne Galaxy, watch the highlights from the ESCRS Symposium at rayner.com/galaxy. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation, please subscribe to our channel to be notified of new episodes. This podcast is provided for general information purposes only. The presenters' views are their own. Rayner does not endorse off-label use. Users must refer to the product labelling and instructions for use for Rayner products in all cases. Not all Rayner products are available in all countries. The full disclaimer can be found in the show notes.